Jessa did not cry when her mother died. She just wore her bracelet every day, as if that could hold the pieces together. That morning, during recess duty, the bracelet slipped off in the courtyard. She only noticed hours later, and by then, the yard was empty, the leaves thick, the ground unforgiving. Her dog Maple froze near the shed, ears forward. Then she began to dig. Teachers shouted, students gathered. Jessa ran. Maple's paws tore through the dirt like she knew something. The rest of them did not. Then she stopped. Her nose touched something silver. Jessa dropped to her knees. It was not just the bracelet. It was a moment she had buried long ago, dug up in front of everyone. And just behind it was something she never expected to see again. Before we continue, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe so you never miss. Jessa did not move. Her breath caught in her throat, suspended between the past and the present. The sounds of the school faded. No more bells, no more laughter, no more playground shouts. Just the scraping hush of wind over leaves, and the quiet heaving of Maple's breath beside her. The bracelet lay half-buried at her feet, a crooked arc of silver in the soil. The chain was caked with dirt. Its familiar shape was distorted by the earth, but there was no mistaking it. The moment she saw it, something inside her broke loose, something old and aching that had not surfaced in years, and behind it, that folded piece of paper, just there, waiting. She blinked at her name written in that familiar looping hand, her mother's hand, the kind that always curled the J like a ribbon and pressed hard into the page. She whispered without realizing, "No, this isn't real." But Maple stood firm, not moving, not barking, just watching. Jessa reached out. Her fingers brushed the paper's edge, careful as if it might crumble to dust. Her heart beat in a hollow rhythm behind her ribs. She hadn't thought of this spot in over a decade, the back corner of the courtyard, near the shed where students were not supposed to play. But once, long ago, she had come here often, to hide, to cry, to write letters she never intended to send, and one day to bury one. The paper made a soft sound as it opened. Not a tear, not a crack, just the quiet sigh of time. Inside were words, only a few. Simple. You are still her, even when you feel lost. That was all. Her throat tightened. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. How could it still be here? How could Maple have found it? How could it have ended up with her bracelet? A new loss tangled in an old wound. She could still remember the way her mother said those words, not with dramatic weight, not like a speech. Just one morning at the kitchen table, over coffee and toast. Jessa had been 16, angry, scared, acting like everything was fine while the world she knew cracked open beneath her. Her mother had looked at her and said that single sentence, "You are still her, even when you feel lost." She had written it down that day in her notebook, ripped out the page, walked to school, buried it during lunch, because she was afraid she'd forget. Now it had returned. Maple whined beside her, a soft, barely audible sound that pulled Jessa back to the present. She looked over. The golden retriever stood still, tail low, eyes fixed on her. It was not the excited stare of a dog that had fetched a toy. It was something quieter, steadier. Like Maple understood something Jessa didn't. Like she had been waiting for this. Jessa let the note fall gently into her lap. The bracelet was still warm from the ground. She turned to Maple and whispered, Why did you find this today? Maple lowered her head and placed one paw over Jessa's knee, as if to hold her there. Her fur was streaked with dirt. Her nose was smudged. But her eyes, those soft amber eyes, never wavered. Behind them, voices stirred. Is she okay? What did the dog find? Should someone get the principal? Jessa had forgotten there were people watching. She turned her head and saw them. Students lined up along the classroom windows, a few teachers hanging back near the doors. Everyone had gone still, not with fear or confusion, but something else. Curiosity. Tenderness. Like they were witnessing a moment they did not want to interrupt. Jessa stood slowly, brushing dirt from her skirt. Her hands were shaking. The bracelet now clung to her fingers like it was part of her. She held up the note for a moment, then folded it again and slipped it into her coat pocket. Let them wonder. Some things belong to memory, but others, like this, needed to be carried forward. All right, she said, clearing her throat. Back inside, please. Her voice was stronger than she felt. The students obeyed, but slowly. Many looked back. A few whispered to each other. Maple remained still until the last of them disappeared into the hallway. Only then did she move, brushing against Jessa's side. Jessa looked at the ground again. The hole Maple had dug was shallow. The earth had been soft, layered with leaves, and yet somehow she had gone straight to the spot. Not just near it. Exactly there. The bracelet. The note. How had she known? Back inside the classroom, Jessa tried to return to routine. She erased the whiteboard, organized papers, smiled through conversations, but the weight of that moment stayed with her. Not like a burden, but like a hand pressed gently on her back. She looked at Maple, curled at her feet. The dog had not left her side once. After dismissal, Jessa locked the classroom and lingered in the hallway. The bracelet was now back on her wrist, slightly bent but whole. The note sat in her pocket, folded tight. She ran her thumb along its edge, and she remembered something else, something even older. Her mother once said that dogs find what people forget. Keys, socks, tennis balls, but sometimes the things they find are deeper than we realize. And just before Jessa turned off the lights for the day, she glanced out the window toward the courtyard, to the patch of dirt by the shed. There was something else there now, not buried, but waiting. Maple refused to sleep. Long after the bell had rung, after the last goodbye wave from the last student, after the final hallway light dimmed, Maple lay beside Jessa's desk with her eyes wide open. She watched the door, the windows, the breeze tugging softly at the curtains, every sound in the room. Jessa watched her too. The bracelet sat on her wrist again, though she had not touched it much since cleaning it earlier. The clasp was still loose. A student named Devon had offered to fix it after class. He liked small machines and always carried a pocket toolkit just in case. She had told him no, not because he would not do a good job. He would. But because it felt wrong somehow to let someone else hold it. Her mother's words still pressed against her leg, folded in her coat pocket. The paper had been dry by the time she returned to her desk, the edges curling inward like it was folding itself closed, trying to stay secret, trying to protect her. Maple rose without warning. She walked to the window, nose twitching, and stared out toward the courtyard, the same spot. The shed stood still under the shadow of the afternoon sky, its edges glowing faintly in the golden light. Leaves drifted from the trees, and landed soundlessly on the patch of soil Maple had unearthed. Jessa followed the dog's gaze, then looked at her watch. 3:46. Her hands paused over the stack of papers she had been grading. Multiplication quizzes, most of them wrong. It had felt safe to focus on wrong answers, clean problems, with clean corrections. But nothing about today felt clean. She stood up. Maple turned before she said a word, already heading to the door. Outside, the air had cooled. The sky was streaked with clouds that caught the last warm light of the sun. Jessa wrapped her coat tighter and instinctively pressed her hand to the note in her pocket. They walked in silence. No leash, no command. Maple moved with a purpose Jessa could not name. The courtyard looked different now. Not physically. The same blacktop, same painted 4 square lines, same rusted bike rack leaning half-buried near the tree. But emotionally, it was charged, alive. Like the ground itself had taken a breath and never let it go. When they reached the spot near the shed, Maple stopped. She sat, and she looked up at Jessa like she was waiting for her to speak first. Jessa knelt slowly and touched the disturbed earth. Most of the dirt had been smoothed by earlier footsteps, but a faint hollow remained, a small impression in the shape of a paw, just to the side of where the bracelet had been. She pressed her fingers into it gently. The earth was still warm. Thus, wind picked up again, and Jessa closed her eyes. A memory came fast and full. A younger version of herself, knees scraped, dirt on her hands, crouched behind the shed during lunch break. Her mother had just been diagnosed. Nobody at school knew. Jessa had tried to pretend it was normal, that she could just do 7th grade like any other kid. She had come to this exact spot that day, angry and scared. She had cried without making a sound, wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist, then written her mother a letter she would never send, then buried. She had forgotten about the letter. Truly, she had not thought about it in years. So how did Maple find it? She looked at the dog beside her. "You knew," she whispered. Maple wagged her tail, not excitedly, but with a soft rhythm, like she understood not just the words, but the weight behind them. Jessa sat down fully now, legs crossed beneath her, and stared at the sky through the thin branches of the courtyard trees. A few students had carved initials into the bark. A quiet kind of rebellion, one she had once participated in herself. She reached for the bracelet, turning it slowly on her wrist. For a moment, she imagined her mother here, walking across the courtyard with that firm, no-nonsense stride, holding a coffee mug and a folder, reminding Jessa to speak louder in class, to not apologize so much. She closed her eyes again. "Why do I feel like this?" she whispered. She was not expecting an answer, but Maple stood up, walked over, and pressed her head gently into Jessa's chest. The warmth of her fur, the grounding pressure. It broke something loose. The tears came slow, then faster. She did not sob. She just let it happen. The grief, long dormant, returned not as fire but as water, washing, not burning. She had not cried like this in years, not even at the funeral. She stayed like that for a long time, leaning into Maple, her fingers wrapped loosely in the dog's fur. Her breathing slowed. The ground cooled. When she finally pulled away, her face was damp, her eyes red, but something inside her felt lighter. Not fixed, not finished, but lifted. Then Maple's ears twitched. She stood. Her body stiffened slightly. Jessa followed her gaze, toward the far end of the schoolyard, near the corner where the fence curved inward. A man stood there. He was tall, wearing a dark green coat, his face partially hidden beneath a cap. Jessa's breath hitched. She rose slowly, brushing dirt from her coat. "Can I help you?" she called. The man did not answer. Maple stepped forward, alert. The man took a step back, then turned, slipped behind the fence, and disappeared behind the maintenance shed on the other side. Jessa stood frozen. She had never seen him before. And yet, something about the way he watched felt familiar. The bracelet clicked faintly against the ceramic sink as Jessa washed. Her hands. The water ran warm, but her fingers trembled as she scrubbed the faint dirt still clinging to her skin. She kept catching her own reflection in the mirror. Red eyes, tight shoulders. That expression she made when she was trying not to feel anything. She had worn this bracelet every day for years, until yesterday. Now, each time she touched it, it felt heavier. Not just metal anymore. Memory, soil, voice, her. Mother's words were stuck on a loop in her mind. You are still her, even when you feel lost. Back in the classroom, Maple was curled by the door, chin resting on her paws. When Jessa entered, she lifted her head but did not move. Just watched. The room was quiet, too quiet. Usually, the last 15 minutes before the school day began were a tornado of pencil sharpening, forgotten homework confessions, and breakfast bar wrappers. But this morning, Jessa had come in early, long before the first student arrived, just to be alone with the stillness and with Maple. The dog hadn't been the same since yesterday. Not distant, no, she was closer than ever, but different. Watching Jessa the way one watches an open wound, gently, attentively, as if to say, I know it hurts, but you have to look at it, and something else. She had growled that morning, just once, soft, low, toward the back window. Jessa stepped to the classroom door and looked out through the narrow glass, empty hallway. She walked to the back and peeked through the window facing the courtyard. Nothing. The man from yesterday had not returned. At least, not that she had seen. But she couldn't shake the image of him, standing near the fence, his face in shadow, still and watching. Not threatening. Not friendly. Familiar. And that unsettled her more than anything. She didn't know why. Just a pulse of something deep in her chest. Recognition without clarity. She turned back to Maple. You saw him, didn't you? Maple's ears flicked. That low alertness again. Not fear, just readiness. The first bell rang. Voices erupted from the hallway, and students flooded in. Jessa straightened, plastering on the practiced smile. She gave the same morning greetings, accepted the same stack of homework, asked the same questions about allergies and missing folders. Routine cloaked her like armor, but she felt brittle underneath, and when a student pointed at her wrist and said, "Oh, you found it," her voice caught in her throat. She looked down at the bracelet. Found. Yes, but what else had been found with it? Recess came quickly. The sun had burned through the clouds, casting long shadows across the blacktop. Children played loudly, kicking rubber balls and chasing leaves across the wind. The same courtyard, the same shed. Jessa stood with her clipboard. Maple sat beside her, not tethered, just present. The other teachers laughed together near the fence. One of them waved her over, She waved back, but did not move. Her eyes scanned the courtyard. Her mind stayed stuck on the letter. At lunch, she returned to her classroom and locked the door. She took the note out from her coat pocket and unfolded it slowly, like it might vanish if she moved too fast. The handwriting was faded, but she could still see it clearly. Every curve, every press of pen to paper. She read the words again, then again, then a third time. You are still her. Even when you feel lost. She had written them down in her own pain, and her mother had said them first in hers. And now they had come back. Was that coincidence, or something else? Maple lifted her head from where she had been napping and whined softly. Jessa looked over. Maple was staring at the window again. Jessa followed her gaze and froze. There was something on the glass. A shape. She stood and walked toward it, and as she got closer, she saw it. A single muddy paw print on the outside, high up, too high for Maple to reach. Her blood turned to ice. She stepped back, heart thudding. The window was locked. It always was, but the print was fresh, still wet, like it had been made this morning. Jessa reached out slowly and touched the glass. The dirt smeared under her fingertip. Maple growled again, the same low, vibrating sound from earlier. Jessa spun around and moved quickly to the door. She opened it and looked both ways. The hallway was empty. That afternoon, she stayed late again. She said it was for grading. But really, it was to avoid going home. She could not stop thinking about the man behind the fence, the note, the bracelet, and now the paw print that should not have been there. Was someone watching her? Following her? Maple was more alert than ever, pacing near the door, sitting under the windows, ears pricking with every sound. Jessa finally knelt down beside her. I need to know what you know, she whispered. Maple pressed her nose into Jessa's hand, and then did something unexpected. She walked across the room, stopped by the door, and barked once, just once, then turned and looked at her, waiting. Jessa followed. They stepped out into the hallway, the air thick with silence. Maple led her toward the courtyard again, not running this time, just walking, steady, certain. They reached the door leading outside, and Jessa hesitated, then opened it. Evening light spilled across the asphalt. The courtyard was empty again, but Maple walked directly to the far edge, to the shed, to the same patch of dirt, and sat. Jessa approached slowly. There was nothing new on the ground, but Maple did not move. She looked up at Jessa with the same steady eyes she had the day before. And suddenly, Jessa remembered. There had been another note, buried here too. She dropped to her knees and began to dig. Jessa's hands moved through the dirt like she was searching for breath. It had started with a memory, just a flicker. But once the thought entered her, it grew with a kind of urgency she could not explain. There had been another note, not long after the first, written during a day she had tried for years to forget. Maple watched in silence beside her. The air around the shed was still, but Jessa's heart thudded like a second heartbeat beneath the ground. Each handful of soil was a year peeled back, a moment unburied. She had forgotten so much of that time. The hospital visits, the way her mother's voice had gotten smaller, how her house had begun to smell like antiseptic instead of bread, the way the bracelet, just a trinket once, had become her armor, and the letters. She had written them to her mother while she was still alive, but she had never shared them because the words had been too honest, too angry. Her fingers hit something solid, not wood, not stone, paper. She paused. The folded square was damp, but intact. The top corner was stained. A tiny root had wrapped itself through the fold like a ribbon. Jessa sat back on her heels and stared. Maple leaned in, nose twitching. Jessa looked at the dog. "You brought me back here." Maple did not react. She only waited. Jessa unfolded the note. It was written in pencil, and the lines slanted hard to the right. Rushed. Messy. It wasn't like the first one. There was no quote. No clarity. Just raw confession. "I am scared she's not coming back. I hate this. I hate everyone who keeps pretending it's going to be okay. I don't want to talk. I want to scream. But I can't. Because I don't know who I am without her." Jessa's throat closed. She remembered the day. She had come home from school and found her mother asleep on the couch. Not just resting, but hollow. Thinner. Distant. Jessa had sat beside her in silence, then stood, walked out the door, and written that note at school the next day. She hadn't even signed it, hadn't wanted to admit the feelings belonged to her. Now, years later, the ground had returned it. And so had Maple. Jessa folded the paper and held it tight in her palm, not caring about the dirt smudging her fingertips or the way her nails had broken at the edge of the hole. She just sat there, breathing, letting the old words echo through the present. Maple moved closer and placed her head on Jessa's knee. "For Breton, the second time in 2 days," Jessa cried. But it was different now, less like breaking, more like releasing. When she finally stood, the sun had dropped behind the building. Long shadows stretched across the courtyard, swallowing the painted games and old picnic tables in quiet dusk. She brushed the dirt from her knees and reached down to pet Maple. "You're more than just a dog," she whispered. Maple's tail swayed. "You're a mirror." That night, Jessa sat at her kitchen table with both notes spread out in front of her, the bracelet resting between them. A candle flickered nearby, casting long, trembling shadows. She had not turned on the TV, had not opened her laptop. Her tweezer phone buzzed with unread texts. One from a colleague asking if she was all right. Another from her sister, just a photo of the sky with no caption. She ignored them. She kept reading the notes. Again and again, until they no longer felt like confessions from the past, but instructions for what to do next. Then she remembered the man, the figure by the fence. She pulled out an old photo album from her side table, one she had not opened in years. Flipping through the pages, she scanned familiar faces. Birthday parties, class trips, family vacations, until she stopped. There, a school photo from her childhood. One she had forgotten existed. She was maybe 12, sitting cross-legged on the grass, and behind her, standing near the shed, a man, face half-turned in the background, watching. Her chest tightened. He too looked like the man from the fence. But that would be impossible, wouldn't it? She snapped a photo of the picture with her phone and enlarged it. Still blurry, still unclear. She stared at it until her eyes burned. Was it just a coincidence, or was someone else trying to remember something too? The next morning, she arrived, at school early again. The bracelet back on her wrist. The notes folded carefully inside a new envelope in her bag. Maple trotted beside her, tail high. The sky was cloudless. A breeze moved through the leaves like music. Jessa unlocked the classroom door and let Maple inside. But the dog did not settle in her usual place. Instead, she walked directly to the back window and growled. Jessa spun around. The growl was louder than before. Not defensive, but sure, deliberate. Jessa stepped forward and looked through the window. For a moment, she saw nothing. Then, between the branches of the courtyard trees, a figure, same coat, same hat, facing away this time, just standing. Jessa grabbed her coat, opened the door. Maple was already ahead of her. They crossed the hallway and stepped into the courtyard. The wind caught her scarf as she scanned the fence. But the figure was gone. Again. Maple ran to the corner where the shed met the tree line. Nose down, ears forward. Jessa followed slowly. When she reached the spot, Maple was pawing at the ground. Not digging, just brushing leaves aside. And there, lying neatly on the concrete foundation of the shed, was an object. Small, rectangular, wrapped in clear plastic. A photograph. She picked it up, turned it over, and froze. It was a picture of her mother. Younger, radiant, laughing, holding a baby Jessa in her arms, and standing beside her was the man, the Bivade. Wind swept across the courtyard in slow, thoughtful curls. The sun had not yet cleared the trees, and morning shadows stretched long across the pavement, turning every edge into a whisper. A few golden leaves cartwheeled across the blacktop, scattering like children late for class. The school building behind Jessa stood quiet. Still, she stood at the edge of the shed with Maple beside her, holding the photograph in both hands. Her mother's face stared up from the glossy print, younger, glowing, free. Not yet sick, not yet tired. Holding baby Jessa on one hip, arm around someone just outside the edge of the frame. The man. The same man from the fence. The same man from the photo in the school album. And now, Jessa remembered. Not clearly, not a name, but a feeling. She took the photo inside, careful not to smudge it, and tucked it into a folder. Her hands shook as she closed the drawer. Maple sat beside her desk, watching. Jessa knelt beside her. "Who is he?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. Maple just leaned her head into Jessa's chest the way she had done that day by the shed. No bark, no movement, just a soft, anchoring weight. Jessa wrapped her arms around the dog and held on. She could have gone home. Could have locked the door and buried the photo beside the notes. But something inside her had shifted. Not broken, not rebuilt, revealed. Maple had not just dug up a bracelet or a note. She had uncovered a part of Jessa that had gone dormant. The girl who used to write letters in the dirt. The teenager who wore silver like armor. The woman who spent so long surviving she forgot how to grieve. So Jessa stayed and waited. The man returned the next day. She saw him from her classroom window, standing near the gate just before lunch. He did not hide this time. He simply waited. Jessa walked out, heart steady. Maple stayed at her side. When she reached the gate, she stopped just a few feet away. The chain-link fence stood between them, old and slightly bent. The man's face was weathered, soft-lined, familiar in ways that made her stomach turn and settle all at once. He took off his hat. "I did not know if I should come closer," he said. Jessa studied his face. "You were here before." He nodded. "I've seen you before," she said slowly. "You have," he said, "but you were young." I was younger. She tightened her grip on Maple's leash, though Maple had not made a sound. I found this, Jessa said. She reached into her coat and held up the photograph. At the shed, he smiled. Not wide, but real. That was the day your mother asked me to take one more picture before I left. Jessa's voice cracked. Who are you? The man's eyes softened. Your uncle. She blinked. What? She never told. You, he said gently. We were close once. Grew up side by side. But when she got sick, there was distance. I did not handle it well. I stayed away. Too long. Jessa stared at him. She wanted me to be part of your life, he said. I could not be there at the end. Silence stretched between them. Then Jessa said, Why come back now? He looked past her, toward the school. Because something told me it was time. Because I missed my chance before. Because I saw your name in a newsletter, and something in me said, Go find her. He met her eyes, and I came to the fence because I did not want to push. I just wanted to see. Jessa looked down at Maple. The dog sat still, ears forward, not tense, just aware. She found things I buried. Jessa said quietly. She brought them to me when I did not even remember they existed. The man smiled. Dogs always know. She's the only reason I'm standing here right now. He nodded. She's a good one. Jessa breathed deeply. I'm not ready. For answers, she said. I am not here to give them, he replied. They stood in silence a while longer. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. She left this, he said. For you. Years ago. I never had the courage. Jessa took it. Her name was written on the front in the same soft-looped handwriting as before. She did not open it yet. Later that night, Jessa sat at the kitchen table again. Same candle. Same bracelet. Same envelope of old notes. She opened the letter slowly. Inside, her mother had written a single paragraph. If you ever find this, it means the world did not stop when I left. It means you kept going, even when it hurt. I hope you're still writing. I hope you're still kind to yourself. And I hope there's someone, person or pause, who helps you remember who you are when you forget. Jessa folded the letter and pressed it to her chest. She turned to Maple, lying by the door. The dog lifted her head. You are that someone, Jessa whispered. Maple padded over and laid her head in Jessa's lap. The next day, Jessa wore the bracelet, again, proudly. She pinned the first note to the inside of her desk drawer, where no one could see it but her. She let her uncle sit in the back row during a parent-student showcase night. She even smiled when a student asked if Maple was a magic memory dog. She said, maybe, but she knew the truth. Maple had not, just found a bracelet. She had returned a daughter to her mother, and in doing so, reminded her that nothing truly important is ever lost, just waiting to be found. Dogs truly are the most loyal companions in our lives. What did you think of this heartwarming story? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily emotional dog stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Click here to watch the next story of love, loyalty, and the incredible bond we share with our paw-some friends.